Subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss an update from Firstpost.
Hi, I'm Rupali Mehra bringing you Firstpost Conversations. The world is talking about the India growth story. We rank 77th when it comes to ease of doing business. We are in the top 3 when it comes to our GDP numbers. However, how rosy is this growth story? The fact is that India has tumbled 30 places when it comes to our social indices and when it comes to the quality of life of our citizens. Today, our cities, which are the hub of growth, are becoming unlivable and they are becoming extremely difficult to navigate and even to breathe in. So what is the solution, and is there one really? Or are we going to constantly have this paradox between high growth and a low livability index? That's the issue we are talking about today. Welcome to Firstpost Conversations with me, Rupali Mehra. Welcome to Firstpost Conversations, and it is so good to have you here. Joining me is Ashish, Shelar, MLA in Mumbai, as well as the BJP Mumbai president. Also joining me is Lubaina. She is an expert in urban resilience, and we will of course love to pick up a lot of tips from you on how we can improve our quality of life. Lubaina, you have been studying urban resilience for several years and in depth, and we always have a young voice in our shows. So great to have you here, Amrita Mahale, as well. Amrita has written a book that is a novel, but it is placed around Mumbai, and it talks about the changing. It is set in the changing cityscapes of Mumbai city. So, but I want to start with you, Ashish. Great numbers when it comes to the India growth story. The world is talking about it. Then why is the citizen so unhappy in our cities? Why has life become so tough for her or him?
I think there are multiple reasons from which we have to actually analyze the thing. It is a fact that in last 3 and 4 years, the infrastructure developmental aspect is going very aggressively. But at the same time, as you know, worldwide we have a discussion whether there is an environmental protection versus infrastructure development. So obviously this would be the reason where both the things, solid voices at both the side, is making the people to raise their voice. And obviously, as you know, the current government is wanting the people to come on social media. They should speak, maybe on the Twitter, maybe on the Facebook, maybe on the WhatsApp, maybe on the mail, and that's why the noise is obviously there. But this will all lead to this something called which we wanted, that is a better quality life, and that is the agenda on which actually the government is trying to work.
Right. So, but on paper, it all sounds good. You know, when you talk about that, okay, people are finally having a voice. They're directly connecting with their MLAs and with the municipal commissioner, even with the Prime Minister on social media. They have direct access. But when one talks about a citizen, and if you compare it over the last, say, 20 years, life has got tougher. It's a struggle. It's a daily struggle, whether to commute, what time to leave for office, whether you're going to reach on time, the unpredictability of it all, including what you talked about, the environmental factors. That is what is affecting the citizen, and it's not just one or two things. These are multiple factors which are magnifying, aren't they?
Yeah. I think one really important thing to acknowledge is that this idea of growth is this sort of dream that we're living. And it very rarely factors in the everyday challenges and struggles of people living in our cities, and very sadly, like the bulk of the poor living in our cities, and we very rarely, like in large infrastructure projects that actually other big ticket projects really don't factor in the ways in which how would this benefit 50%, 70% of your city. Really, those are the questions that one needs to ask. And I completely agree with Sir that there is this kind of schism between the environmental discourse and the sort of development and infrastructure agenda that we have. But I would argue that actually those things have to work together. You cannot talk about growth without acknowledging that we are also walking into a climate crisis. The recent IPCC report that was released in November, which focused specifically on global warming and global temperatures, shows two scenarios of 1.5 degree scenario and a 2-degree scenario, and if we allow our cities to actually experience, go up, not do anything, and we allow ourselves to walk into a 2-degree scenario, we actually see a kind of casualty of 2.6 million more number of people who are going to be heat vulnerable in the future. So how are our cities actually engaging with some of these climate risks is a question I don't see. And I mean, I'm an urban planner and I haven't seen one development plan that actually factors in the future climate risk. And so I don't think we have the luxury to talk about infrastructure and environment as two separate issues anymore.
So Ashish, you are talking about it as you know, two sides of one spectrum, and not as really one, as one project that needs to be spoken about. That the climate change and our social living conditions, our livability index, that needs to be taken account when you work on infrastructure projects. Lubaina says that there are no such projects that actually bring in these factors.
I think I will partially admitting what she is trying to make a point to. But as a government answer, I can give a very clear answer. If you will take Mumbai city and then the BMC, then the BMC every year comes with an environmental status report, which they have to publish in the month of July every year, which they do. I am skeptical about whether what are the implications and implementation after that report is a question mark. Number two, as far as the livability and the standard of living for the citizen, again come back to the Mumbai city. The report as far as state government also publishes about the same. The luxury, what she has rightly put it, in the city of Mumbai, 50% of the people, if they are staying, or more than 50 are staying in the slums, then what kind of the development we are looking at? The big ticket projects, of course, they are also needed, but at the same time, the livability for the poor needs to be also enhanced. In that respect, again, I am not trying to bring a typical politics into it, but I am trying to make a point about it, that these are the projects which cannot be get completed within the 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Maybe the housing sector, maybe about the environmental protection, there needs to be a sustained policy for the same. Unfortunately, what I am trying to make a point is that if slum redevelopment schemes in the Mumbai city, that is one of the area. Yes. Now Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana is the second area. Now in these 3 years, if this government can construct 6 lakh houses, at least 6 lakh houses can be rehabilitated, maybe in the metro MMR region, not in the Mumbai city, but in the MMR region. That is an achievement we are trying to get to do about the same. Now there are small issues. I am not going to go for a very big ticket size project. Now since you also stay from the Queen of Suburb area, you are also staying in the Queen of Suburb area, I am trying to make a linking road a little hassle free. When I am trying to do that, obviously there are some structures, there are some stalls which need to be rehabilitated. There is a voice. Obviously, I am not saying they should not make a voice about it. But when this voice comes, then the activism comes, then the activism, then judicial activism comes. From judicial activism, then the stricture comes, and then the press reports, then the elected representative gets the backlash about the same. So, larger goal to be achieved, we have to be, we all talk about China, we all talk about Singapore, we all talk about so many cities in the world. But we are not going into the part which the citizens cooperation and all other administrative cooperation also for the same.
Right, but Ashish, somehow with your argument, it seems like you're putting also the onus on only the citizens on the press.
I'm not trying to do that. I said even as far as the administration is concerned.
And Lubaina, what about jurisdiction of multiple agencies? Do you think that's where the fault line lies?
It's incredible how even if you're dealing with one junction, you're like dealing with 5, 6 different agencies. And so how do we then think about, I mean, every conversation when we talk about planning, it comes down to talking about interagency cooperation, and that becomes like one of the biggest implementation challenges in most of our cities when you, no matter what sector you're talking about. So I think it is time that we really take this governance issue very seriously and think about how do we actually plan these projects at the neighborhood scale. So empowering actually elected representatives, whether they are corporators, MLAs, or even ward offices, to really be able to come together, bring all the different agencies in place and just like solving the problem then and there, and designing systems that are pleasurable to use.
Ashish, do you think there's political will to do that?
I admit one of the point which she really mentioned, the multiple jurisdiction, it is a major challenge. I'll tell you, as rightly mentioned, if railway, the next to railway, there are certain meter land which you have to take a NOC from the railway. If we are talking about metro, then Mumbai Metro has their jurisdiction. If you have to do something in that area, you have to come to Mumbai Metro. Then the PWD, then the BMC, then the Airport Authority, then the MHADA, then the MMRDA. There are BPT. These are, and Mumbai city is fully, means, as we know that we have beautiful coastline. So obviously CRZ, Coast Guard, Navy. So these are all multiple issues. I think this starts from Delhi to local.
Yeah, and this is not just a Mumbai city issue or a particular Bangalore city issue. These are international issues, right? How are international cities able to despite these issues? There are cities older than our cities in India. How are they able to actually go through it? Why aren't we actually coming up to that level?
I will go to Singapore. They do save the water in the sea itself. If you go to Thailand, the aeroplane actually you feel that it is landing on the sea. It's have that feel because strip is like that. Just think, today near sea coast, if you have to even construct a toilet, you have to go to Delhi. Forget about anything else.
And it's your government in Delhi, Ashish.
No, I am again coming back to point. Today we have started and given the permission for the coastal road, which is a ring road. For 20 years it was a dream for this city. This government has given all 26 permission. The work has been started. Again, I am sorry, trying to bring back to the same point. Our judicial system is taking the case on case and giving a stay. We are going underground metro not to harm the city. The stays, the religious issues.
I don't think Lubaina agrees with your point.
So when you think about the coastal road, when you actually think about moving, the way in which you must think about the city is moving people, not moving vehicles. What are we going to
go with the people?
But how many people are in a vehicle today? The reason why you are saying
we have to see both the angles. We are going metro, we are going a railway, and we are going a coastal road.
Yeah,
it
but
is not that
how
it is
many people are? Just think about the location of the coastal road in terms of like its distance from the rest of the city.
This is an issue because I fully respect the point. But the issue is that when you will start anything new, there will be in this city so vibrant.
But you have
there will be an opposition and opposition, and that makes the city to go 50 years down the back.
No, but you have to acknowledge the fact that while the world is talking about coastal risk, while the world is talking about the damage that we as human beings are doing to our environmental ecosystems, our coastal ecosystems, how can we justify something like a coastal road where and toll-free coastal road where you probably will just see BMWs and Ferraris moving up and down like it.
I am not fully agree with what she is trying to say. See, we need to look at the holistic plan. Let me complete.
I think that's exactly what she is saying. What she is saying is that there is no holistic plan.
Let me complete to that. This government has not started only coastal road. That's what I am trying to say. The harbour railway, 12 coaches ka platform. Now we have started with 15 coaches. Mind well, 1. 2. Electrification of the railways, AC to DC. 3rd, rail over rail project from CST to Mulund. So additional extra carrying capacity for railway capacity. At the same time, creating metro for 70 lakhs people more, and then the coastal road for giving the extra connectivity to those who want to go by vehicle. Now when we are doing all this together, this is an integrated plan, and then the connectivity from east to west, and as rightly mentioned, that integrated transport system where one ticket system, if I go from BST bus to railway station, from the same ticket or whatever extra cost I have to pay from there to metro, that is the project.
But I want to get it, Amrita, also into the debate. Amrita, from a citizen's point of view, there is a defense of the policies and the fact that we have the will, but there are blockages. Here Lubaina is talking about that there is not a comprehensive plan that she has seen ever in any of the cities of India. Talk about citizenship and citizen participation. How invested is actually the citizen when it comes to our cities?
Yeah, I think, but before that, I would like to point out that this era of looking at this choice as infrastructure versus environment, I think that age has passed. I mean, the crisis is at our doorstep. So I completely agree with Lubaina that needs to be built into any view we have of the present or the future. And as for your question of citizen participation, I mean, there is social media now, people are speaking up, and I would also love to understand.
So are they just speaking out, and are they connecting to lawmakers who can make a difference, or are they actually on the ground also working for change, where, and especially the youth? Are they actually incentivized to work for change for their own city? Where is that sense of ownership?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think at least here in Mumbai there have been many citizen movements. The RA metro shed, for example, or I think there were like 6,000 trees that were chopped to construct the metro station in Colaba, and there were like big citizen protests against it. And obviously these get more visibility because of social media, but the actual change is happening on the ground. But at the same time, I think there needs to be more consciousness, and this narrative of how important caring for the environment is needs to be ingrained a little bit more into people's minds.
Also, you know, talking about citizens and what our quality of life has become, you're saying it's an interim, it's just for the interim because there is, you know, so much infrastructure, and so if it would take you 1 hour to reach A to B, it takes you 2 hours today, but it is a that's a short term problem. You all are solving it with multiple infrastructure projects. So that is one end of the argument. The other is about the right to quality of life, and I think, you know, it's important to discuss personal quality of life as well. We have right to food, we have right to education. Is there a need for right to quality of life as a law?
I think that's a very difficult question, because I think what we are also seeing is this idea of quality of life is defined very differently by different people. You know, for some people, quality of life translates as wanting to be in an air-conditioned environment every place they go to. So whether they're in a house, an office, cafeteria, or transport, they want it air-conditioned because there's a certain sort of vibe. So I think, or you know, there is sort of a conflict of this, like the whole encroachment problem in the city, right? There is constantly a conflict between different kinds of users who use public space. So this idea of quality of life, if you just translate that as a right, without really kind of engaging people in a certain idea, in a certain sort of culture of urban empathy, that would lead to a lot of governance issues as well. Just going back to this ownership and participation in the city, I think that is where we really can become responsible citizens and have aspirations that are responsible. So once we have responsible aspirations, then we can demand for quality of life that benefits the sort of greater common good. But like in Bombay, we've really not been able to kind of engage citizens. Like the BMC did it with the Mumbai development plan. There were lots of public participation meetings and stuff like that. Yeah. But it was still like we need to be able to kind of sustain that culture. You know, like be able to. I mean, how many of us actually go for a ward meeting in the wards that we live in? How many of us actually kind of participate in political discourse and really kind of let our leaders know what are the kind of conversations, or what are the kind of imaginations we really want, and really participate? And so I think that kind of dialogue needs to really be created and empowered in the city to then be able to have more kind of responsible ownership and aspirations.
Do you agree, Ashish? Do you think that citizen participation actually is one of the key reasons why we keep cribbing about lack of having a good quality of life or lack of infrastructure in cities, but when it comes to investing your time and investing your effort, citizens really don't seem to bother? They want everything provided to them.
I think what idea has been just proposed by her is very welcome idea. It needs to be done. Actually, there needs to be have more dialogue. Yes,
right.
But at the same time, what I found as an elected representative is that what we say, we feel that it should be that way only. If it doesn't happen in that way, we go, I will not use that word wild, but we are going very aggressive. I genuinely feel, being an elected representative from 20 years, I belong to a constituency where this voice is there, obviously. We have I can say good interaction compared to other part of Mumbai. People do interact, but obviously everybody feels their issue as an important issue, which is obvious. One cannot say so. But citizens' participation holistically, that is a need of the hour. Of course, we don't have any system where citizens will come to know the holistic plan also. As you rightly mentioned, they have to go to one agency, then to another agency, and then all these things. So obviously, well-informed citizen is the duty of the government, and the well-informed citizens' participation is the need of the hour.
Right. Amrita, are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think one aspect we haven't touched upon so far, that apart from economic opportunity, clean air, environment, another thing that we look for in our cities is the right to or access to safe, clean public places. And that's a very important part of how you experience your city. And if I think about how the city has changed in the last 20, 30 years, and having lived in Delhi for 5 years, and I just moved to Mumbai a few weeks ago, in fact, in Delhi there's this culture of the gated colony, and here we have more and more of these large housing societies where all the open spaces you interact with are basically private spaces. So the idea of every building, every citizen thinking about how they fit in with the streetscape, how they fit in with the city, has probably gone down to some extent. And I would want people to be more conscious of that fact, that how can you be a good neighbor, how can you be a good citizen. And I really like the term you used, urban empathy. So I think that needs to be brought back into focus as well.
Yeah, and urban empathy for everyone, for agencies as well, for political players, lawmakers, for different agencies that work with us, and citizens also. Now, why is this not happening? Of course, it's because of the factors we have spoken about. There is, at one level, there is a frustration, and that people have had enough. And then there are reports that 17 million Indians now are actually living abroad. A lot of them can afford to shift. So are Indians who can afford it, are they actually fleeing our cities because they've become impossible to live in? Amrita, you're the youngest, so we would know the trends from you actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think people who have the option of moving abroad, a lot of them do. And I think the driving factor there has been economic opportunity. And there's also what's called the reverse brain drain, right? So a lot of people have come back, and they've come back because there are jobs here, great jobs here. And also because they can afford to kind of cut themselves off from the problems of the city to some extent. And when they do have to interact with the city, like get on the roads, get out of their houses, get out of their air-conditioned offices, there is a lot of frustration. But
Ashish, does it scare you? Indians who can actually be taxpayers and contribute to the economy are leaving our cities and heading out of the country.
I don't feel so. That the kind of GDP which we are growing on, the kind of job creation we are doing, the kind of foreign direct investment is coming to the cities of this country, it doesn't match to what you are trying to say. But my point is that the issue for our country, or the cities will say, not countries, is a social issue. Try and understand, we are a developing country. We cannot compare ourselves with a developed country. It's obviously wrong to compare apple with mango, I'm trying to say. So here, coming back to Mumbai, as you rightly said that whether I should have a right to have the access to a clean open space. When and you have, safe also obviously, compared to Delhi I feel we are safe, but nothing against anybody. As she has rightly said, 60% of the people stay in slums. So unless you address them, obviously they will also use the same open space where you want to enjoy by your so kind way. So there is a multiple issues of and major issue of social issues. So we are a developing cities, we are a developing countries. So this is a phase, and I think in this phase the involvement of both the sides, urban poor, urban middle class, urban rich, and the planners need to come to some understanding with all agencies, including judiciary, is needed. We started our discussion that why should I bear to go to one place to another in a queue, and when we are providing an alternative to it, we will say why we want to do that, where will you look at the environment or not. So all these issues come.
The issue really is not, when we're talking about open spaces, safe spaces, it's not just about having your own private open spaces and clubs.
Space.
It is about public spaces, which is accessible to everyone.
So it is accessible
woman,
to
child,
these slum dwellers
which
also.
is green. Absolutely, absolutely. But where are these places?
Of course, there are BMC grounds. I'll tell you something. We'll come to the very zero down to a basic issue. 3 years prior, till 3 years prior, as far as open spaces in this city is concerned, there was a policy which was saying that if there is open ground, garden, RG, PG or whatever, there can be allowed public-private participation to maintain the same. And when you say to maintain the same, obviously when you have to maintain the quality, you will have a restricted entry at restricted hours and all kind of other what I can say act which will disturb the peace, quality and the sanctity of the place will be restricted. When the BMC did that, the agitation started, oh, our public places, why it should be given to a private people. So BMC withdrew the policy for private initiative, where Tata was also doing in some places, Birlas were doing, some of the houses were doing and maintaining a nice open space. I'll take a joggers park, which was being maintained by somebody who was donating the same. And as agitation citizens movement, as we rightly said, as participation has started, we withdrew that policy and now all open spaces are accessible to everyone. And now the people from Joggers Park are complaining me, oh, I am jogging and somebody is looking at me, staring at me for 2 hours sitting there. How will you stop it?
Why don't any answers?
No, this is exactly what I was talking about, you know, this idea that if you don't really engage citizens and if you don't really bridge the distances between different income groups, you're going to end up having these kinds of urban conflicts. It's a very normal kind of flux that happens out of any kind of development project. I mean there needs to be a lot more kind of information and understanding of why certain sort of policies. I mean, if we have a policy that actually says all our public spaces are truly public, then that's a very good thing. And how do we then actively inform citizens and create sort of an awareness program around the importance of public spaces that are safe, really make people realize, I mean, if we claim that we are safer than other cities in India, then there is a reason why we are safer than other cities. How do we then bring some of those things that work for our city to change the narrative and help, you know, people who are in urban planning, we call this attitude NIMBYism, which is not in my backyard attitude, which how do we help people kind of get, you know, normalize or get rid of that attitude that creates a lack of empathy and, you know, fear of the other. And that's actively something that we need to do in our cities, so that we're used to living with people, because how do you not live with people in Bombay? If you're in Bombay, you have to be able to live with people and people in like crowds.
No, and you have to navigate the city and its citizens, right? You need to embrace both. And sort of last words, because we are running out of time, but we use the word urban resilience, we use the word citizen resilience, whether it's floods, whether it is a drought, whether, you know, it is traffic jam, that okay, we are resilient as citizens. Do you think that word actually has almost become an abusive word now for a citizen? How much more resilient can they be? How much can they take before people say enough is enough, we can't take it anymore? Ashish, very quickly.
I will not say it's a resilience, I think it's a legitimate voice, and it may be any elected government, they should hear about the same.
Right, Lubaina.
No, I think that the term resilience is, of course, we use it very kind of colloquially. It's a much more complicated idea that basically talks about how do I as a citizen understand what the planet is walking towards, and how does more information, more involvement make me more responsible in terms of my personal choices and my response mechanisms. How does someone living in a slum know that a tsunami has happened, or you know, there is a big flood that's kind of waiting to happen in the next 3 hours, and how do you then prepare for it? I mean, that's really where resilience really should be. We use it more in terms of like, okay, we know how to pick up our pieces and get back to normal life, which is a little bit of a you know, colloquial sort of adaptation of that term. So I understand the angst around like constantly thinking, oh, we're resilient, and kind of cheering ourselves about it. Like there needs to be a lot more work to actually make us truly kind of resilient.
In a more wholesome manner. No?
Yeah, I mean one of the
citizen.
Yeah, one of the things is that if we as citizens have always actively participated in flood risk reduction or managing floods in Bombay, how do we then channelize that existing potential and plan for it? So your city's disaster management plan actually engages citizens from the beginning. So today, like while we're sitting, in the beginning of January, how do we prepare for June by making sure that at the neighborhood level we know exactly where to go if we're stuck? Right. Where are the hospitals, where are the rescue areas, whose house is available? I mean, all of that happens in the kind of last hour, where people on Facebook will say, okay, you can come and stay in my house if you're stranded somewhere. But how many people actually have Facebook who are stuck? Is your phone even working while you're in the flood? So not depending on that kind of sentiment, but really planning for this potential that exists in our city, and kind of integrating it into a plan.
I think that's a great point there. Amrita, last was on urban resilience. Do you think that term is backfiring on citizens, or do you think that the term really needs to be now expanded and needs to become more wholesome than the way we see it?
I think that term is much better than the even more malign spirit of Bombay, which I really dislike. But I think like both of them have pointed out, one part of resilience is the ability to absorb shocks, but it also needs to be more forward looking and more positive, that how do we mold our cities into more equal, more fair, more delightful experiences where you have a certain quality of life that works for most citizens and not just one narrow definition of citizen.
All right, Amrita, Lubaina and Ashish, thank you so much for joining us. Great discussion, and look forward to more such debates on First Post Conversation. Thank you.